Hi, guys. My name is Frank McCormick, and I'm here with my co host, Paul Rossi, and this is Chalkboard Heresy. We are a show dedicated to talking about education, bringing teachers on, listening to their stories, and really whatever else comes into the mix. We're here today with Theo Olson, and Theo was a teacher, and until Black Lives Matter decided that he couldn't be a teacher anymore. And he may be, I think, Paul, as you said, the most canceled man in America, um, which
Canceled harder and earlier, I would say. It's
can,
what it sounds like.
yeah, canceled hard and many times. And I've wanted to bring Theo on because I have a lot of respect for Theo because he was canceled, I would say, before it became almost fashionable in a sense. It's kind of become like a badge of honor now, and there's a lot more support when you are canceled. I felt when I, spoke out against my school district, I had kind of a small army on Twitter. And Paul, I know you had a lot of support as well. And Theo, you didn't. So, Theo, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your background, what you're doing now, really whatever you want, how you got into teaching?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. It's great to see you again. Paul, it's great to see you too. I follow you guys and I look to you as beacons of rationality in this insane world that we live in right now. Um, in in my background, I encountered Black Lives Matter um, piling onto me in 2016 in February. Um, and No, there was no such thing as being canceled. Um, I think that we used all kinds of other words like dogpiling and getting mobbed, mauled, tarred and feathered, ridden out on a rail. People were obviously canceled in history long before me. People were canceled around the time people were attempted to be canceled. I think at the time that it happened to me, Nicholas Christakis out at wherever he was, Yale, his wife was mobbed by, and he then for defending her for Halloween costumes or something like that in 2015. I think that um, who who else was prominent at that time? There was Milo Yiannopoulos mobbed for something that he had said about his sexual experiences around, but it came like at the same time.
But your experience was unique in that you weren't looking for any type of provocation. You weren't, asking for it
Oh,
in any sense. It,
I, I think I was looking to absolutely puncture the hot air balloon
oh,
of
okay.
of pressure. I think that I was a perfect poster boy for the cancel culture movement because I have such a big mouth and I don't take kindly to being told to shut up. I don't like authority mandating that I do an untenable job of closing achievement gaps that cannot be closed with, say, and I worked with special education kids, with, say, a kid who has speech and cognitive and is confined to a wheelchair having to do graduation requirements by a certain age with um, with kids who have been through ultra violent situations at home. um, I I just knew that nobody knew what was going on in the classroom. Um, around Okay, so let me take
So
it
so
back. So
yeah, bring us
yeah,
like
go ahead.
where are you teaching? What grade level? What's your day-to-day life like? And then what happened? What
Yeah.
started the controversy?
Um, well, there's obviously a long backstory, and then there's a short backstory. The short backstory being that on in a Facebook group on February 29th, 2016, I snapped. It was a group of parents and union members for St. Paul Public Schools, 2,000 plus members, and I said, would anyone care to explain to me the school to prison pipeline that I have supposedly not done enough to interrupt? Because if you can't show it to me, and then you seriously owe us teachers an apology. I picked that item on purpose. It was one of a myriad of topics that I could have brought up, but I said that in an angry snap. And parents immediately, who had no kids in my school, who have nothing to do with me, don't know me at all, are saying, do you really have no idea what the school to prison pipeline is? Come on, dude. And I said, no, you don't know what's going on. Kids are using their iPads for bullying, for drug dealing, for setting up beatdowns, for a whoring train. We had an incident that I couldn't talk about at the time, where the entire football team at Como Park Senior High School had received blowjobs from a girl, a white girl, and it had been settled. And when I mentioned that, it's because I heard that term in my co-taught science class, and we were dealing with all the insanity and fallout with kids, girls screaming at boys and slapping them around because they were furious at boys for having participated in this, and we had no idea what was going on until I heard about it. And so anyway, those two Facebook posts that I posted were the short story. The leader of Black Lives Matter entered my classroom and said he wanted to talk to me. He was trespassing. Then he accused me, and then he walked away.
So was
And
this
I
like
said,
the
what?
next day or like a few
The
days
next
later?
day.
The
The
next
next
day,
day.
he came
Yeah.
in and said he wanted to talk to you.
He wanted to talk to me. I had class going on. I had some disabled kids in my class, and I recognized his face. And then I thought, hold on, what's he doing here? And I followed him, and he just walked out of the library where my office was located in a conference room, and he left. And then he posted on Facebook that I had called the cops on him. I mean, so many misunderstandings. I never called the cops on him. I talked to my principal about his invasion of my room, and I talked to our SRO, our school resource officer, and they're like, "Oh no, this is never going to happen again. We're not allowing that." And I later invited him out for coffee, which he ignored, and then he invited me out for coffee, and I was like, after he posted that I called the cops on him, I am not going out for coffee with this guy. He is a known stalker. He's got a very perp-like background, and I'm not going to name him, but he's he's not a unifying dude. He's still around anyway. But what could possibly set this up in wintertime 2015, 2016 is that our district was in a crucible-like situation, just ready to blow. We, of course, the whole country had been in urban public school districts, had been trying to close the achievement gap. And I remember, in the late 90s, we were too. We had this thing called multiculturalism and diversity. And then after No Child Left Behind in the 2000s, we just focused on diversity and this term equity, which hadn't really been used prior to the 2000s too much anyway. And then in 2009, St. Paul Public Schools hired Glenn Singleton out of San Francisco, his group, Pacific Education Group, AKA curriculum known as Courageous Conversation, to solve the problem at a cost of $1.3 million to the taxpayers of St. Paul. It
So
started as
the community is already angry and riled up about the racial inequality they perceive
kids left
between.
behind.
Okay.
Kids left behind, low test scores, high numbers of Black kids being suspended, sent to the office,
Mhm.
which has always been the case. And so when
It was the
after
same at my school too. I mean,
yeah um, after we hired 3 different companies to try and help close the achievement gap, and hired them on 1 year, dropped them, tried a new one, dropped them, and then tried Courageous Conversation in 2009 with all of their binders and binders of tips and ideas, and really scapegoating of pale people. I hate to use the racial terms because I don't really believe in race. I'm over it. I'm post-racial. Um, like this professor from out east, I forget her name. Um, I
So
forget
it's
what her
like, is
name is.
that Dr. Sheena
She,
Mason?
Oh,
Sheena
Sheena,
Mason,
yeah,
yes.
she's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I've studied
Yeah,
with her.
and
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
yeah, and Camille Foster. And
Hmm.
I just at the time, I I felt like more information would help rather than continuing to preserve this silo of abuse and of really terroristic tactics being carried out in my school. Um, they stripped kids' IEPs of their rights. I was at this time a special ed teacher for 10 years, and they stripped kids' individual education plans of their accommodations and forced all kids, no matter what their disability was, into regular education classes without our support. And then we became kicked to the curb as babysitters in our building. They closed our in-school suspension room and they started paying principals to not suspend kids of color. Um,
Can I
uh,
ask Theo, can I ask about,
yeah,
was this because of the movement against tracking in some ways? Like, was it the idea that somehow if you segregate children based on their learning differences, that is somehow doing them an injustice or stigmatizing them in any way? Is that the logic behind that, or was it
it,
not even articulated that way?
not even
Yeah.
articulated, but there's no doubt that they did not want to track kids on academics or behavior. There's no doubt that there's always your boots on the ground when you're in a school, but you don't know what the thinking is behind what they're ramming down your throat. And I know that they did not want to, certainly didn't want to track suspensions or referrals of kids to the office,
Because
which
of the
were
racial disparity. Because
right. The
because you
racial,
see
Hmm.
that black students are suspended at a higher rate.
right, yeah, and
Because
they
there's yeah, I mean there's two arguments. One is that they misbehave at a higher rate, and one is that there's systemic racism and teachers are out to get them.
right.
We had the same
Obviously,
thing at
it's
my school. Yeah,
they've never ever attempted to produce the racists that are responsible for these huge numbers of disparities in referrals to the office. They have said that it was racism and have never attempted to find the racist. So, um, how convenient is that to have this straw man solution to an argument that has nobody who's ever been responsible for any of it. And and I can just hear these people on the other side going, "Oh, you want to bet? Um, oh, there's so many racists. Oh, racism is everywhere." Even my pale colleagues um, will say, "Oh, it's in me. It's in the water. It's everywhere, Theo. What are you talking about? Racism is so systemic and baked in." And but nobody ever produces it. They just say it's on you to find it in yourself, you know. And I'm not going to do it for you. So educate yourself.
yeah.
That was kind of the attitude. So
So let
when
me.
we,
So you've got
yeah,
this environment where there's it sounds like racial tension around disparities. There's this high school incident with the white girl. I'm assuming a lot of black students that kind of added to the mix, and you
mm-hmm,
have misbehavior in the school with kind of very clear disparities existing that you can't talk about. And then you come along online and you're a white guy and you make this comment that basically says put some onus on the students like or the families in the community. Like
right,
there
yeah,
isn't a school to prison pipeline. There's
right.
a
Well,
family to prison pipeline, a gangbanger to prison pipeline, a drugs to prison pipeline. But the school, if anything, is stopping that. And the Black Lives Matter, he comes in your school. Walk us through what happens then, because we're gonna put some pictures up and show people. We can show
oh,
them right
good.
now. Um, and there's massive protests. There's people showing up at the school board meeting, yelling about
Yeah,
you, demanding
yeah,
your
right.
blood. So how did it get to that point? What happened?
Um, I would say that within a few hours, um, the post that I made had 30 to 50 comments on it.
Wow.
And it was a long, very interesting educational thread. I was quite interested in teaching bystanders, all these good-hearted parents, what actually happens in a school, what leads up to all of these riots. We had riots in our parking lot of 30 to 50 kids. This is a school that is an urban school where the white population is 30%.
Mm-hmm.
30% of the school. Blacks were 33% of the school. Asians, we have a large Southeast Asian population, and African and smaller Hispanic and indigenous population in the school. But we had riots. We had teachers shoved around. We had handguns, a couple of handguns. Anyway, back to within a day, when the leader of Black Lives Matter comes to my room, they start issuing ultimatums. Either you fire Theo Olson, or we are going to shut down that school. So BLM says they're going to march on our school and shut it down. And I immediately, as an experienced teacher, had gone to my principal already to talk about this and the trespass. And so she knew, my Black principal knew, our Southeast Asian SRO, he knew what was going on. And I still got to teach for a week. I was still teaching until March 7th, when I was walked out of the building, gave up my badge, keys, and laptop, and was shut out of all data on March 7th, 2016. But what was going
Because
on
of
was,
the demands of Black Lives Matter, they caved in and
oh,
took you out of the
right.
building.
Well, BLM could do no wrong. If you said that there was racism going on, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to. You've got this pale guy, me, who's, it doesn't matter whatever credentials that I have. I may have worked with a 85% impoverished population, totally diverse. Our building is totally diverse, and our faculty is, largely white, which is too bad. But so what? I don't buy the fact that I don't buy this representation is necessary. Dictum that's put out there all the time, that I can't see myself in my teacher, so I can't learn from you. We've been fed that since the 1990s, and I was over that. I was done with that anyway. But within a week, all of these posts had been going back and forth about getting Theo Olson fired, and then 5 people from the community, none of whom had any kids at our school, met with the superintendent. Was I invited? No. And then they learned that I had a blog going on. This blog, which I've been reading out loud as a serial novel, since I've been writing it since 2014. They came upon that, and then they accused me of racism, absolute appropriation and use of African American vernacular English, because I portrayed a fictional world in which a teacher struggles to meet the needs of kids. But on March 7th, on March 7th, I am to meet with my boss in the office, and she comes to get me. This is when I'm about to be walked out. And as we pass a hallway, a computer lab teacher is being beaten on in the hallway by 2 black boys. Computer lab teacher is white. There had been a drug deal collection going on in his lab that he interrupted, and he gently escorted them out to the hallway, and then things got physical. Kids are sitting out there with their laptops or their iPads, and it got videoed, and I'm actually in the background of the video. I'm being brought to the office because I have mentioned that there are drug deals being set up on iPads and social media. At this point, our devices weren't really locked down, so kids could do all kinds of stuff on their iPads. Anyway, drug deals. And here's a drug deal that's being interrupted by a guy, and we go towards the incident. We break it up. He gets a concussion from hitting the floor at the back of his head. the kids are suspended. He goes to the hospital and somebody's got to sub for him. Well, I subbed for him. So I took over his class for the rest of the hour. And when the bell rang and class was over and there was something else going on in his room, I was to report to the office to answer to the accusations that I had written that there are drug deals going on social media. Anyway,
So now they're
it
just looking
defies.
for anything to get you. I mean, now it's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think you couldn't ask for a more crazy confluence of events. I think, if you break it down on the ground, the nuts and bolts of what happened to me didn't have any names for what was going on. What happened to Brett Weinstein was a whole year later, 2017 April. What happened to Jordan Peterson over Bill C-16 was September 2016. But what happened to me in February of 2016 was it didn't really have any names for it. We'd never talked about critical race theory. As I say, when a policy is changing, if you're a teacher, you don't know what it's about necessarily unless you're doing continuous ongoing education and you read a little Derek Bell or you read a little Kimberly Crenshaw and you become kind of into intersectional theory and the school to prison pipeline purported by the new Jim Crow, and we're all kind of like samplers, you as an educator, which I'm not bragging, is one of the lowest the lowest degrees in the academy, that in all the social sciences, you're not expected to know much about theory. So all I know is that we were threatened with terroristic tactics of make it happen or else you're out of your job. Prior to this, I had been threatened that if I didn't make things happen, I would be fired. And I was under a lot of pressure. So,
and when you say make things happen, do you mean reduce these disparities, which are, dependent on all these different factors you can't control, or is that what it is?
I had gone to the office. What it was about was I wanted to adjust the curriculum for a reading level of my kids that I was teaching who were below the fourth grade level in fluency. And I went to the office because I had written to my special ed supervisor that the material that I had been mandated and was piloting at Como Park Senior High School to deliver was missing half of my caseload. They were reading at kindergarten, first grade level. These senior high kids, they were seriously disabled in fluency. They could not handle stuff that started at the fourth grade level and went up to 12th grade level. So what happened there was that she and my boss and my principal, you have multiple bosses. She said, your scholars, she used the term scholars, which was a big deal then, had been for 3 years or so, were achieving, and we will find the data to prove it, Theo. So I turned my iPad around and I showed her, here's their scores. They're not achieving with this mandated curriculum. And I was the pilot of this program. She had asked me to do it. And I said, but here's their grades and here's the assignments that they've turned in. They're not able to do fourth grade material. That's why I'm augmenting with this other stuff that you won't even let me augment with it. So it was really a specific curriculum-based decision. We also had like a anti-bullying month going on, and she objected to my saying 2 girls needed to be out of my class. And I said, well, they're also bullying this very, very vulnerable girl in the class, and she was upset at me because I wanted to remove them because they were Black and the victim was white. And anyway, it gets down to a lot of nuts and bolts. But overall, when you're told to do this, or else, Theo, we will find somebody to do your job for you, because your scholars are achieving. It becomes an untenable, mind-blowing crucible situation.
It makes you crazy, doesn't it? I mean, that was very, very similar to my school. I mean, you feel like you're losing your mind, you're being gaslighted, and
and your
like,
supervisors know nothing about what you're trying to accomplish and
right.
the realities of the kids. I'd done home visits. It's not like I had no clue about my kids' backgrounds. I knew that they were roughly handled by cops on the east side of St. Paul. They told me. I knew if they were in gangs. Half my kids were in gangs. I knew if they were pregnant. I knew if they had a clothing line online that they designed and sold. I knew where they slept last night, just like you probably did. And they knew that I had their backs. And after I got in trouble, my kids, most of them black, would come up to me and say, "Mr. Olson, they just don't know you like we do." And I was like, I was very grateful for the support that I got from my kids, some of whom still talk to me today. Um, well, so to
So what
wrap it
happened at
up,
the school board meeting, and how did they
oh
eventually
yeah,
get rid of you?
they what happened was our local news reporter for the St. Paul Pioneer Press mined my blog that I had deactivated. Um, and I had over 500 pieces in there, probably 40 of which were about stories that I was making up as I went for 3 years about kids. And he mined them and he handed them off to a school board member. And the school board member was very, very familiar with this leader of Black Lives Matter. And within 24 hours, Black Lives Matter had my blog and printed it out, printed 60 pages of it out and handed it out at the school board meeting, which was in March 2016, to get me fired. And of course, a huge shouting match ensued. I wasn't there. I had been told by my own union lawyer to stay away. You know, I was, of course, told you can't set foot on school property. You can't talk to any of your colleagues. I was afraid to even text my cohort, my special ed cohort, to ask how are the kids doing, because somebody might pass it on and it could be traced, and then I could be in further violation of my suspension and fired. And I didn't want to be fired. I eventually was suspended after that March school board meeting. Well, the suspension, I think it took until May. I sat there in like a silo of no information, nobody talking to me, my lawyer not talking to me. And this is a union lawyer. This is not this is somebody I paid through my union dues. And then I was made a sub around the district, and I substituted. By the summertime, I was placed at a middle school where the new leader of Black Lives Matter was a teacher's assistant. This woman is now on the school board at St. Paul Public Schools. She is writing tripe about me. She's talking about Theo Olson being a racist all over social media, and she's at this school that they placed me at. Well, by this time, I had been looking for a couple dozen jobs and landed one elsewhere in the southeast suburbs called South Washington County. They hired me. I had told people what happened to me, and you know, the desperation for finding special ed candidates was very strong. But to this particular school district, they didn't vet me at all. I got hired. I think I didn't tell them what happened to me, and I know I didn't. I told everybody else. I did not tell South Washington. They hired me, and then when I saw some stalking tweets about me saying, well, it shouldn't be too hard to find out where Theo Olson works, he's got a new job, I went to her and I talked to her. It was workshop week in August 2016, and I told her, you know who I am, right? Because you might receive some phone calls from people, I'm assuming, that will tell you that I'm the Theo Olson from St. Paul Schools who got in trouble. And she went, what are you talking about? She had put in a call to my boss, didn't get my boss on the phone, but hired me anyway. And so then she went to HR. They put me on paid leave. They fired me. And then I got a job at a charter school. I lasted there about 8 weeks. They fired me. And then I think middle of 2017, I finally got a job in Cook County, the northeast tip called the Arrowhead region of Minnesota, about 250 miles away. And my principal up there said, you know, Theo, a lot of people would say, don't hire you because you're a racist. I want to know, are you a racist or what? And I was like, praise Jesus, somebody actually asks me, you know, because there's so much innuendo. And I went, no, my God, I prefer to work in an urban setting with a rainbow diverse crowd. And he goes, good. Just do the best you can. Glad to have you aboard. And so he hired me. And then around the middle of the year, he quit under pressure because the N-word had been used among kids at the school. We had like 4 kids in the entire building of K through 12, a contiguous, long Rambler style building. It's a very sparse county up there. Anyway, some of my native kids called a black kid the N-word. And then the word got out that there's racism in Cook County schools in Grand Marais, Minnesota. I'm living up there in a guy's bedroom. My wife and daughter are still at home. And I'm going back and forth each weekend, coming back on Sunday nights, managing my caseload of 6th through 12th grade graders with disabilities. And I was like, I have nothing to do with this situation. By the end of February of 2018, I was called into the office, and I'm leaving out a lot. I know it's a long story. It doesn't fit the narrative right back here. It's the title of my story. It's 3,000 word plus tract about what happened. They fired me in March of 2018. And then as I get home, when I get home from northeastern Minnesota, I get a letter from the Board of Teaching that they are suspending my license due to racist and controversial remarks that I've made 2 years prior to that. And so I'm answering in 2018 to things that happened in 2016 for the first time from the Board of Teaching. They suspend my license. I talked to the same attorney again because I can't afford a lawyer. Even though I tried. I contacted like 25 law firms, and one of them almost took my case. But anyway, my lawyer says, well, I think you should really compromise, Theo, and knock it down to a 1-year suspension. And I said, I'm not ever compromising again. I'm going to fight this. And she said, okay. You know, and it took a year. 2019, June of 2019, I was approaching my court case. And all of a sudden, they dropped my case and cleared my name, reinstated my license, and said, you're good to go. But just never get in trouble like this again, you know.
So the Black Lives Matter activists followed you from job to job to job.
Well, yeah, or Education Minnesota, our statewide teachers union, brought in way the hell up by Canada. Because of an Indian boy using the N-word on a black boy, we had a racism problem. And nobody knew that it was a kid using it. Nobody knew the manifestation of the bullying, but we have a racism problem. And so a loose-knit group on Facebook of Arrowhead Indivisible, a group that's there to reject Trump, comes out of the woods, a very liberal group, and they're going to find this racism. And so we hire Education Minnesota, the teachers union, to come up and start teaching us about our innate white privilege. And it's just it's just unbelievably wild to me. And so at one point of our sessions there in the cafeteria up there on the Minnesota frontier, a presenter says, who I don't know, says, Theo, I feel like I know you from somewhere. I recognize you. Have we met? And I said, no, not that I know of. But there was my daughter's advisor from Central High School in St. Paul Public Schools was also one of the presenters, and she recognized me too. I kind of like put my hood up and walked out of the meeting and left. I was going to the bathroom anyway, but I left. But it was like a week later they called me in and fired me. So it was our statewide teachers union that sort of spread the word. I think, in my most paranoid of dates, that it was racism against pale people from within that decided to out me and strip me of my career and my livelihood. And that's the whole story.
What was
Wow.
your emotional, psychological state like during this? How did it affect you?
Excuse me. I was so depressed. I was really I was really a wreck. I thought I had saved my career and my life by moving up north to the frontier. Um, I thought that I was going to be okay. My boss supported me up there, but when he left the district, I knew my days were numbered. And then when I was called in and let go, I kind of collapsed. I came back to town to St. Paul, Minneapolis, and I just reeled in a very deep depression. To make money, I started taking care of a friend's cancer-ridden and very dementia-ridden mother to get by on an hourly basis. I decided to stop trying to look for more teaching jobs. I went to therapy. I went on medication. Um, and I contacted the Department of Displaced Workers, a branch of the unemployment office. And there was a very sweet, very indefatigable representative who kind of taught me how to talk to people again about my skills and how to interview for a job. So between my therapist and medication and my very supportive wife, Karen, and my kids, Sam and Juliet, I got through it. But it was really touch and go for a while. I was sizing up trees where I could hang myself. I was thinking of ways in which I could die, and I didn't want to be on Earth anymore. After I took care of this elder with dementia, I took care of another two people with dementia. Then I got a job at the post office, and finally got a job. And my hands got wrecked by that. Not the weight of the mail, but just my hands were messed up. I've got arthritis, and I got a job finally caring for patients with who are locked in inpatient psych at a hospital in Minneapolis, and primarily with adolescents, kids ages like 5 to 18, who are locked up because of self-harm. And so now, and I've always been kind of geared towards that. I feel like I got to explain everything, but I've always, my dad was a social worker, very liberal guy, and a therapist. I have a brother who's a psychologist. We have a lot of caregivers and writers in our family, in our extended family, a lot of writers and teachers. And it just felt natural to me to be in the caregiving business again. And I've been there working with kids in inpatient psych for 3.5 years, and I'm still there.
Oh, good for you. It's
Yeah, thanks.
Wow. I mean, what strikes me about this story, Theo, is that you are a hounded man. You were pursued from job to job in a way that few people, that I haven't heard of this level before. And you're someone who obviously cares deeply about the kids you work with, and clearly, you have a real talent for the caring professions, as it's called. And to see the fall upon your back this scapegoating, essentially, which seems to be the essence of this problem, to blame problems on some exogenous force, which is essentially tied to skin color. And the other thing that I think makes it a double whammy for you is you're also an artist. You're a novelist. you were creative, and you had fallen into the um, fallen under the wrath of those who are also pushing this in the arts. So if I was going to look at this intersectionally, you had this sort of double whammy, hit by cars from two different directions at the same time, and you have these moral entrepreneurs that are essentially using this as an opportunity to grift, to get big contracts, and to sell their wares, peddle their wares as easy solutions to large institutions and large government institutions. It sort of like reminds me of the Music Man, where they got, we got a problem in town, and it's,
here in River
starts
City.
with right here in River City, and it's racism.
Yes, right.
So, my heart goes out to you, man.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame that there wasn't, I feel like if this had happened today, you would have had, I think, a lot more support, and, could have networked with people like Paul and I and others to like make some noise and push back, which I think is what we're seeing. And in education specifically, teachers, when they transgress against the orthodoxy, it's the ultimate kind of sin, because teachers are supposed to be, they're the intellectual priestly caste that is supposed to uphold the sacred tenets of anti-racism, of wokeness. And that's what I learned, and I know Paul as well, is that when you challenge that, man, they really want to get you. They really want to make an example of you, and they want to, as you talked about, like, you know, struggling with suicidal ideation. Um, I struggled with very deep depression during my experience and after it, because the attacks are so relentless, and you learn that these people actually want to hurt you. They want you to suffer. They want you to, in many cases, like, go away, die.
Yeah.
Like, people will write comments like "kill yourself." I
Oh
want you,
yeah.
like, they want you to be destroyed.
Oh yeah. I
And
had no,
I don't understand that, because even the people I vehemently disagree with, and in many cases find abhorrent, I never find myself going to a place of wishing them personal suffering, of wanting to see them hurt. And I just found that so bizarre. Like, people, the attacks that I experienced against me, and you're talking about, that what you experienced, is they often become so personal and irrelevant. It's just, they're looking for weak points to exploit, and they'll dig through your personal life,
oh yeah.
and they'll try and find ways to hurt you.
Yeah.
And
They went
it's
after my kids. The leader of BLM went after my daughter online. Um, she was 15 years old at the time. Um, and these people still walk around trumpeting their contracts and their publishing and their with there's nothing they can say about their accomplishments other than the negative effects of who they've gotten rid of. There's nothing that they want to do that's positive or unifying at all. Um,
can
this
you
is a
can you imagine if these people had more absolute political power on a larger scale? I mean, can you imagine what that would be like if they got kind of their, if they captured the government to the totality
If
they
they were,
want?
if Ibram Kendi got his Department of Anti-Racism,
yes, exactly.
I mean,
I
we're
these would be
mean,
talking
the
about,
people
they
staffing
want,
it. Yeah.
yeah, they want people to
his,
go away. With
his
the right
work
amount of
is
power,
just
they would make that happen.
yeah, his work is just so predictable and lame. He's really tapped into a fantastic vein of superficiality, and and people are obviously thirsty for it. All the purveyors of wokeness, all the books published, and the speaking engagements. It's a huge industry, and it was getting to be a big industry in 2016 and 17, with these sort of hucksters going around the country like Glenn Singleton, who's big in Loudoun County. Um, At the time he had over 220 contracts in the U.S. in 2015, and so that's a lot, and it's just mushroomed from there. It's a huge industry, as you guys know. It's one of the biggest budgets in any company. Who's the leader of DEI and belonging to DEI and B?
Belonging, yeah.
Theo, did your
Yeah.
colleagues offer any support or did they turn on you?
They did at first. Our school was really corroding. Its unity was corroding. Its climate was corroding, and there are a few teachers who were there then who are still there now. Probably my closest friend left the building and moved to Hong Kong. A lot of people left teaching altogether. I would say I could count on two fingers the people who are still conversant with me, who know about teaching in St. Paul schools. Whereas prior to this, I had hundreds and hundreds of friends on a first name basis. There's a lot of people who agree that what I went through was atrocious. They have no doubt in their mind. But Theo made mistakes. Would be their aim. I have family members and cousins who were in teaching who have turned their backs and just skidded off the end of the woke left and believe that racism is systemic. It's in our hearts. It's in our water and air that we breathe. And that I made mistakes for not acknowledging how hard it is for our darker brothers and sisters. And I'm just not all about that identitarianism anymore.
It's astounding to me the kind of cowardice, I think, within education. We can talk about the things we've seen, the things that hurt students, the anti-racism kind of propaganda, and people hear that and they're like, whoa, they're shocked. And that's, we only talk about the tip of the iceberg sometimes. There's so much to talk about.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when you think about that, and you talk to other teachers and like, yeah, I know it's terrible. It's a mess. It's a broken, rotten system. And they're bringing in these ideological mandates that are increasing racial hostility. And then you ask, where's the rest of the teachers? Like, no, I mean, I've said this to you, Paul, a lot. Like, how many of us are there that like are actually openly willing to speak out and talk about this in a public forum and address the public? I mean, it's like me, Paul, Theo, Daniel Buck, Tony Kinnett, Ramona Bessinger. I mean, there's a few others. I'm like, that's it?
Yep.
Out of millions of teachers? That's it?
That's how hard it is for the media to try and dig people up who will talk, because there may be thousands, if not tens of thousands of teachers who have been racially mistreated for their melanin in their skin. There are only the Paul Rossi's and Frank's and Theo's and Ramona's willing to talk about it. There are people in other fields that you have to like go out to Nicole Levitt, a lawyer in Philadelphia. She's a huge hero. And some of the parents who are willing to speak up,
Sure.
Nicole Solas, and more power to them. Gabby, out in Las Vegas or wherever. I mean, huge heroes. They've done so much to help. This is interesting. I mean, I have to say that I've always been a liberal person, and I guess I just cannot completely beat it out of myself. My parents were very liberal and raised us totally DFL in the 60s and 70s. And as much as I despise the public schools for what they do to kids and how much they abuse us, I think out of the three of us, I might be the one who just won't let his tentacles loose from the grip of the public schools and wanting to return to a way. Maybe it's because of my age. I'm older than you guys. That I see things better back in the old days, when we had chalkboards, and damn it, we had times tables or whatever.
Mhm.
But I mean, all that stuff was before my time too. But still, I mean, what's unbelievably ironic about this push for anti-racism now is that it has become a huge philanthropic push with Black Lives Matter running the Minnesota Parent Union and trying to push to take families out of the public schools and into charters. We have the most woke charters networks in the cities that exist anywhere. Um, they're all about anti-racism and Kendi and D'Angelo. That's everything they're about. Even our Catholic schools have departments of anti-racism in them. Um, so I think that I'm of the mindset that to ditch them, which a lot of people have done, we've lost tons and tons of kids in both the cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, to charter schools and private schools, is not really an escape from wokeness, at least not here. Um, I don't know what you guys think about
I
this.
agree with that. I think that it's seen as a silver bullet, and it's clearly it's not. Um, it is. It's pervasive in the culture. So if you want to create a real marketplace with choice, you have to have real alternatives. And if you have this monoculture where this is driving the driving vision and mission of these schools, well, then you're not going to get that. You need to have real market entrants that are offering an alternative.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how you do that.
Exactly.
That's an economic problem. I
Right.
don't know how you solve that.
Well, I think we
Right.
need to, make sure going forward we need a network and we need to stand together, especially those of us who are in education or have been in education, to make sure that there are no more Theo Olsons. Like that should never happen, and it should never
Thank you.
happen again. And uh, the hard thing is finding these people and letting them know that you're out there. I mean, we exist kind of in this little bubble on Twitter, and sometimes people gravitate and they find us, and we can amplify them. But I think it's building a louder voice so that when people, especially teachers, do feel attacked, the Bob's coming for them, they're going to lose their jobs, they're going to be pushed out. There's people that have gone through it, that have fought against it, that can give them advice and support them and have their backs. Because I think the worst thing you can do is to retreat,
Hmm.
is to back down, and that's what so many teachers do. Understandably, like they want to save their pensions and their jobs, but
Yeah.
they make themselves so vulnerable, and they make themselves such easy targets once you start backtracking and apologizing.
We're too
Um,
agreeable. That's the problem.
Well, yes.
We're too caring. We're in the caring professions, and so we care. And so that those you're just not the type of pugnacious characters that we need a new skill set, I guess.
Yeah.
sure.
That's exactly it. Um, but I even in 2016, when I knew that I couldn't talk, I looked at, text messages of the few teachers who sent me thumbs up of support, Theo.
Mm.
I would think, God, would you guys even join me? You know what it's like. You know what it's like trying to exact these untenable mandates. You know what it's like. You've been threatened over and over and over by special education and by the superintendent of St. Paul schools. If you join me, that would be two teachers, and maybe we could get one from another high school and another high school,
Mhm.
and then there'd be four voices. Imagine going to the media, despite them telling
Mhm.
us not to go to the media, but everybody was terrified. Nobody
Mhm.
wanted to speak up. You don't want to be another Theo Olson.
Well, all the institutions seem to be against you. You had even your own union wasn't supportive.
Right.
I mean, this is the institution that's supposed to protect you. And I've heard from other teachers privately that the unions are now woke, so you're not going to get any support there. Is
No,
that
not
true?
at all. They were so completely co-signing onto courageous conversation and beyond diversity was what that
Mm.
morphed into. It's all Glenn Singleton's ideas and his cadre of curriculum writers about where you stand on the moral compass and so
Moral
forth, and
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
moral entrepreneurs. that there's just no way to counter any of it. I mean, yeah, when your own lawyer is saying, I'm not saying you're a racist, but Theo, you say some pretty racially inflammatory stuff.
Well,
I'm like,
let me.
okay, so
I mean,
then,
I had when I saw it, counsel. What I heard from many lawyers was, no, I'm not going to take your case because I have other clients. When I pushed them, I said, why not? They said, I have other clients who wouldn't be happy with this. So
yeah, right,
this,
exactly.
that's it's really an economic decision on their part. They're not going to stick their neck out to defend someone who might turn out to be a racist, and or
Right. Oh,
just simply the optics aren't good for them. So the
yeah.
profession itself, the legal profession itself, is compromised.
Oh, it's totally compromised. You have to have a guy who's really, or a gal who's really um, interested in making a bright marquee above their name
Hmm.
or a shingle above their door, who is young and ambitious. There was this young and ambitious attorney who entertained my case and totally agreed it was atrocious how I was treated. And he looked at my case for 2 weeks. And then he finally said, you know what, my law firm with my brother handles cop cases too, and I can't really
Mm.
risk my future um, of trying to both investigate cops for brutality and then defend you. Would probably be a bad marketing decision. That's the closest I came to finding a lawyer who would actually look at my case.
Wow. Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are such cowards today. I mean, what always strikes me is, whether it's in school and there's a discussion with teachers and students about, like, for example, the Holocaust, or people go to Holocaust museum, they're like, I'd say something, I'd speak up,
Yeah, right.
I'd do
Hmm.
that. And then
Presentism.
you have these
Mm.
minor, historically minor, like, situations like yours or mine, where someone could just, like, say a little something, like, oh, I'm too scared. Like, really? So you're saying, like, you'll go to a professional development and you'll talk about, like, how courageous you are, and you would stand up if you were at a certain place in history, put your life on the line. But when it comes to, like, supporting a colleague or a friend or a family member, where you might have a minor risk to, like, your job security, you're like, well, that's the line for me. I mean, if that's the case for most people, we're screwed.
I'm glad you
Like,
Yeah.
brought that up, Frank, because I had just had a teacher we interviewed on another episode, Larry Malley,
mm,
who gives that lesson to his students who are so sure that they would do the right thing during the Holocaust and
mhm.
during slavery epoch. He asked them, think of one issue where you would stand up to all of your friends, your parents, and your colleague, your peers, can that they would disagree with you on, and a lot of the kids find out, well, actually, there isn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's really it is really illuminating. Theo,
Aside
I
from
wanted
the
to.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Aside from that cocky talk about how kids would have done something different in the Holocaust or in any the Red Scare or whatever, there's this there's this lens of looking at everything in a presentist
Mm,
mindset where every single sin of the past must be judged by the the values that we hold inherent today. I just I just heard that the New York Times was looking into whether or not Chaucer was a rapist yesterday, and I think Christina Summers tweeted about it, and I was like, oh my god! So now we're gonna, and they've determined that even though this has been talked about for decades, if anybody studied Chaucer, and I haven't, but they would know that that is part of the controversy about him. Not everything about him, but it was part of it. And the New York Times determined that no, in fact, he did not rape someone. So we don't have to cancel Chaucer.
right, right. Oh
Presentism.
man. Well,
Judge
then,
everything
I mean,
by
if you
today's standards.
combine the presentism you're talking about with this idea that nothing has ever changed, that is, we're still as racist as we used to be, only the outward forms have changed. It seems like a contradiction, no?
Yeah, we're allergic. We're allergic to progress.
Yeah,
If
I
anything,
like.
it'll set us.
Progressiphobia. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
Yeah, I like when they say things are actually worse now.
right,
Like
because they're
how?
more subtle.
yeah.
Right. They're just Yeah, it's even worse than actual
Can you
chattel
imagine?
slavery.
Yeah, going back,
Yeah.
1600s, a slave's being whipped, and you go, "Hey, you think that's bad?
Oh
Wait,
yeah.
wait,
Look at
wait,
us.
wait till you hear about white people asking if they can touch your hair." I mean,
Right. Step into the time machine, and now
the look you would get, I just can't imagine. Uh,
right. You want to change places with me? Because yeah,
yeah,
I
Yeah,
mean,
it might be worse.
it,
I
it might
mean,
be
the
worse.
past would definitely be worse. We have made progress. Shocking, I know. It's a racist thing to say, but we've made progress.
Theo, you have a Substack that has a must-read article on it about your story. Can you pronounce the name of your Substack for me? It's Hotspur.
Hotspur in the Henry the Fourth, Shakespeare's Henry the Fourth, Part One, spelling of the name Hotspur, a nickname
Okay.
given to Henry Percy. Hotspur is HOTSPVRRE. It's the way they spelled it
Oh, interesting.
in the first quartos of that play, rather than just SPUR. But anyway,
And
um,
and one of the things I like about it so much is that you have real on the ground stories about what is it like teaching in a very rough school with so many challenges. Uh,
right.
and I think it's really interesting to look at, and a wake up call really for how bad things have gotten.
What do you do when
Thank you.
two scholars pull knives on each other?
Well, you must be culturally responsive. That's the main thing.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
right. You
If
must.
if it's culturally appropriate, if a stabbing is culturally appropriate, well then who are you to interrupt that
That
discourse?
that's how
Right,
these that's how their culture expresses frustration.
Hmm.
right.
You don't
That's
understand that.
that's just kids making unfortunate choices. Think of the trauma they've been through when they stabbed other people, or
I
when
had
they,
I
yeah,
had that my first year teaching. Walking down the hall, and there's a group of black kids, and they're accosting another black kid and kind of holding him up and like, the fuck you doing, man? Like, we're gonna fuck you up, punk. And like, um, I went to the principal, and they pulled up the videotape, and they're like, "Oh, that's just how these kids are. That's just how they talk. That's just their way of like, horsing around." I'm like, it wasn't horsing around. Like, they were threatening violence on him. Like, no, no, no. That's just the way they talk to each other. You don't
yeah,
understand.
Yeah, who
right,
are you
right.
to impose your white norms of civility?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
really,
your
the
punctuality.
cynicism, yeah, the cynicism and the and the degraded expectations. It really is racism. It really is shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's a
nobody
perfect
calls it out.
storm. No,
Yeah.
a perfect storm of lower expectations, rules removed from rule books, and blame on white people makes a cocktail of complete explosion ready to happen. Um, in I forgot what I was going to say. Um, yeah, never mind.
it's
It's
it's a
just
lot to take in.
It's a
It's a
lot to
lot
yeah,
to
process.
go over
Yeah.
because it is such a distortion, a funhouse mirror
yeah,
of
right.
of,
And
of way schools should be.
well,
But
and you want to move on too. You want to.
Mm.
I've been at this for 7 years, I guess, talking
right,
about what happened.
comes to define your life, absolutely. And
Yeah, and
but
you
but
don't
but
want it
it's
to.
important to. You're right. You don't want it to, but I think your story and what happened to you is important to tell, because people need to know that this stuff does happen, and it does happen to teachers, and they need support when it does happen. And we have to kind of form as an alliance, to come to these people's aid, because there's nothing worse than being alone and feeling like you have no support, and having kind of a mob of people start to surround you and suffocate your life. And I think the answer is when you've got other people that, especially people that have like a platform on social media, who can draw attention to it and help you kind of stand up against it, because that's the only way it'll stop or go away. They don't know what to do when people say no. I'm not
Yeah,
going to be canceled. I'm not going to go away. They just don't know what to do. And in my um, case, I found that the more I stood up and the more I said no, I'm not going to stop, I'm not going away, they actually would start to back down. They'd try again
Hmm.
sometimes, but they would hold off a little bit, or they'd be more reserved and cautious about how they attacked you. They'd get a little more
Yeah.
sneaky. But
That's what I admire about you, Frank, is that you did not back down. You continued to speak. Um, I think you're out in front of it before it even, as I recall, I think you were out front, outspoken before things got to be super publicly known about you, and so you were kind of leading the way on your vindication.
yeah, I
Um,
try. I mean, that was what I tried. The minute I knew that they were on to me, I wanted to get ahead of it as much as I could.
Well,
and you
that's what
too,
bullying.
Paul.
Yeah. Well, not as much as Frank, and I certainly had a very different environment I was teaching in than both of you. Um, I didn't we didn't have to deal with really any of the deep challenges of a rough school. Um,
But your essay came out before you were let go,
that's right. Yeah,
wasn't it? I mean, you
yeah,
were talking about how you heard your name over the loudspeaker or something
yeah. They
about
had
what
a
Mr. Rossi did. You were
Yeah, they
walking in the
didn't
halls.
they didn't name me, although they said there is an individual, a teacher, everyone knew who it was. And they had to read this sort of profession of faith and profession of a reassertion of our anti-racist goals, which really aren't goals, they're just premises. To every class simultaneously. And I remember I just was walking around the school listening and looking in at the kids. Like I was like, I wonder how the kids are reacting to this. Like, what is it? Is this? And they saw me, and they were like,
Uh,
hey, um, it was surreal. But
on,
nothing,
yeah.
I didn't have to, I was not hounded from job to job. I have
Well,
not gone back to teaching, but
you were published by Barry Weiss, and right,
yes,
yes,
and
yes,
and
you put your
yeah.
foot down too. I think when you kind of put your foot down and stand up, um,
Well, I
you know,
remember the thing that really got to them was that I think they were expecting me to would do sort of what I had done in the past when I had pushed the envelope, was to acknowledge my errors of my ways,
mhm.
to let their moral bullying uh, get me to capitulate. And when I didn't this time, then they said, they kept raising the bar of the accusations to try to bully me morally into admitting wrongdoing. And when I did not back down to that, um, then they realized, I think, this guy is indigestible. We're going to have to
indigestible.
we're going to have to pass the stone. I think is the way to
Oh
put
my
it.
God.
Uh,
Oh my God. What a great
with a
metaphor.
with a medical metaphor. Yeah. Um, but I think this is like what Frank you did uh, is an inspiration, because what do bullies fear most? Bullies fear when you stand up to them,
Pushback.
right?
Yeah.
When you push back, the bully says, "This is more trouble than I thought than it's worth. How much is it worth for me to get this notch on my belt?" I don't think it's necessarily malice which is driving them to destroy us. I think it's more a trophy. They're seeking trophies, and to
Mhm.
say, look, they're going to hold up your head or your scalp, and they're going to say, "I got one." That's
Well,
the game, right?
I also find a portion of expiation from it, sort of trying to externalize what's shameful about their own divisions and personality and conflicts in their own mind. If they could
Hmm.
project it out and find it in Paul Rossi or Frank
Right,
McCormick, that scumbag, then
right,
then
right.
then they're like they're absolved, you know?
Right.
Right, but if you stand tall, then you become a mirror, and they must confront you, and they must see
Right.
your humanity. They must see, oh my God, this guy he's not he's confident, his frame is strong. I can't get him to weaken. And so that
Mm-hmm.
confrontation, that without losing it, without
Mm-hmm.
going crazy yourself, which is tough. I think is very compelling, as not just to the person, but also as a kind of as a kind of theater for others, right? So people see that and they say, "Oh, this guy isn't going away." If you go away, then they say, "Well, maybe he probably was racist. Maybe there's something
Right.
to it."
And the
And
minute you
yeah,
apologize,
that's it. Yeah.
there's blood in the water the minute you apologize.
I mean, I have no problem reflecting. I mean, believe me, we've all reflected. We've all thought this through. This is not, what do they say, fragility or whatever. I mean,
Right.
believe me, no, I've interrogated myself down to the bone,
Yeah.
as I think we all have, and you have, Theo, and it's just what you're dealing with is a set of as a religious cult, articles of faith, premises
Mhm.
based on nothing but a narrative, and a few cherry picked facts which tell a story. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you
Comprehend.
I think this we could say so much more here. I don't know, Frank. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just, what humbles me, I think, is and saddens me too, is to think about at the time you went through this, um, what it must have felt like to be alone. Because if I think if your story had happened today, and we had gotten a whiff of it,
Hmm.
man, like you would have had an army of people coming up and holding up your back and defending you, and things might have turned out very differently. Um, and that's the feeling I get. It's almost like a sense of regret, like and that's probably the part of me that likes to fight too. I kind of man, I wish this had happened
Yeah.
today. I wish I was there because, I would have I would have like flown out to Minnesota and been like, let's get him, like gone against the crowd. Um,
Thank you.
but it was just such a different time, and in some ways that should give us some hope too, that things have changed somewhat, and that like
Hmm.
there are people, maybe not enough, maybe they're not as loud as they should be, but there are now people willing to stand up. And maybe not in education, maybe not enough, not nearly enough, but even outside, there's people to stand up with teachers and have their backs. And we just need to keep growing that and keep becoming louder and uncancelable. Um,
Yes.
you know, not hide from these bullies, challenge them,
Right. Right. Yeah.
make them afraid to cancel us.
Right. Yeah. I think you'll find me marginally invested anymore in trying to um, raise a voice to this topic because I keep hoping that not only will I move on, but the country will move on from this this drunken uh, we're this drunken frenzy that we're on in trying to lay everything on these power differentials. And yet, I'm discouraged. It continues to happen. People continue to be torn asunder by cancellation, which I think is such a stupid word.
Mm.
People lose their lives. People commit suicide, and they become destitute and lose their homes and their
Sure.
marriages and things over this. It's a little bit worse than canceling. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think of what Graham Norton was saying about in the UK about J.K. Rowling in the last couple of days, that and everybody like storming about how cancellation is not such a big deal. It's just being held accountable. You know,
Right. Accountability. Yeah.
it's such a travesty. Um, yeah, I wish that I had as much hope as I used to have. I don't much anymore. My life has returned to one in which I can scrape by and I can pretty much say what I want to say um, publicly without fear of having everything taken from me. I could get fired from the hospital, I suppose. Um, I actually joined the union, my seventh union, and 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 it's kind of a purist thing to join a brand new union um, and argue for the safety of our coworkers so we don't get the shit beat out of us by our mental health patients. And stuff like I've been punched in the face and been grabbed by the balls and had feces thrown on me and all kinds of stuff. And so there's this pureness about this particular union that doesn't have any politics associated with it yet. And yet I am the dinosaur of this union. Everybody in it is so young and vibrant and hijab wearing and trans and lesbian and progress pride flag waving and affirming. They're all gender affirming and everything. And yet we all get along despite all of these politics because we're united, because we get beat up all the time by mental health patients. And so there's this negative in our life that causes everybody to unite and rattle our sabers and try to march on the president of the hospital, to no avail. But anyway, it's really kind of refreshing and a privilege for me to be a part of this vibrant diversity, which I love. I love diversity, and I'm totally fortunate to be part of this group. But I'm sure that I am muted, if not blocked and canceled by half of them, because they see my shit.
Ground. We have
Yeah,
common
right.
common purpose.
it's
That's
really weird.
that's something kind of hopeful about that.
Well,
Yeah.
Theo, we really appreciated hearing your story, and we wish you all the best, and would love to have you come back on and talk with us sometime.
I'd love to
You-
just shoot the
Mhm.
shit with you guys
yeah,
anytime.
yeah, it was great hearing that. We're glad you're doing well, and I know you want to move on from this, but you stay involved. I think your story is important, and so is your voice, and I think a lot of people need to hear what you have to say, and we hope to get that out there. So thank you.
Thank
And I'm
you,
really
Frank.
glad.
I'm honored to be on.
And once again, that Substack is terrific. I really urge your listeners to check it out.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, guys.
TheodoreOlson.substack.com. Thank you, Frank. Thank you,
Th-
Paul.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming
Theo.
on. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time, guys.